Well, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to UnBolted. I am your host, MJ Bolt, and I've got some very special guests with us. We have, of course, it's Friday, so we have Pastor Brian Noble from Family Policy Institute of Washington Action with us, and we've got special guests, Peter Bean, who is from the Legislative Action Team here in the Spokane County Republican Party. Thanks for being with us, you guys.
Hey, thank you for having us on.
Yes, thank you for inviting me too.
Yeah, Peter. Well, so we have Brian on pretty regularly. We kind of do these once a week updates, which has been great. But Peter, people don't know you. So why don't you give people a little background about yourself? You've got a different accent than Brian and I. And so you might want to tell people a little bit about your heritage and also how did you get involved? What led you to getting, going that next level and getting involved?
I'd love to. Actually, it's not me that has the accent; it's you guys.
That's exactly right. That's right.
Yeah. But yes, I'd love to let you know. So I was born in the UK and lived I guess 2/3 of my life now there. Decided to move to the US when I was, let me think, 40 years old, and set about looking for a job here and kicked the immigration procedure into play, and so we've been here now in the US about 23 or 24 years. 2001, wow. I got here. And actually, I didn't live in Spokane at that time. I lived in New York initially, on Long Island.
So that's why you have a New York accent. I knew as something
that's why
like that.
It's coffee. But and then I was 3.5 years in New York, and then moved to San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and was working there for about 6 years, just over 6 years. And then I moved to Spokane and bought a house in the woods and settled down to kind of a peaceful existence in this beautiful state.
So now I know that in our relationship, as the three of us, that at some point you became a legal citizen, right? You got your citizenship here. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct. I am an American citizen now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I came here with a green card and a work sponsor, and then just took the civics test and held my hand up and became a U.S. citizen. I'm not sure exactly how many years ago now, but probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So you moved here, you moved to the U.S. and you got to Spokane. What made you get more involved, Peter, with, activism and with things that are going on, especially like the legislation activity?
So when I moved to the US originally, I moved here because compared to where I lived in the UK, I thought the US was more of a meritocracy, and that, if I was going to work hard and commit myself to this culture and this country, then I would probably do well. And I have to say, I haven't done terribly. I mean, I don't regret moving. I don't miss the UK particularly. But that was back in 2001. And I actually moved to the US a week after the 9/11 incident went down, and I was in New York. So, I sort of started to take a big interest in politics, but was a little bit disconnected and busy and working life like everyone else. And so it was only when I actually moved to Spokane and in the last few years that I began to take notice of what really was going on. And that was an eye-opening education process for me. I had no idea how the state legislature worked, or what they were doing, or who was involved even. during the Obama administration, I was actually, becoming firmly of the belief that I was leaning more to the right, and actually, I'm a Republican, so unashamedly so. And so in the last couple of years, while the Biden administration was in office, I started to see a sea change in American politics, which was very disturbing to me because I brought into this country and moved here with a frame of reference and an opinion of what it was like here. And I could see it changing before my eyes. I had children in the school system when we moved here to Spokane as well. And, I started to be very disturbed about what was going on in terms of their education and politically here locally in Washington. And so I decided to actually just get a little bit more involved. So I joined the local Republican Party. I started to educate myself on how all these things worked. Started looking at what was coming through the state legislature. Started volunteering with the party. I was involved with the Lincoln Day celebration. So I thought, well, I have some fairly useful technical skills. So decided to lend those to the process. And then it all spiraled from there. So Stephanie Brendan made an appearance, and she is a ferocious advocate for the legislative action team, and has tried to keep me on point and engaged. And even though I occasionally waver, and that first year when we actually started testifying in the legislature and registering an opinion against the various bills that were coming through, I actually got a feeling that initially I was skeptical and thought, well, this is not really going to make any difference because there's a Democrat majority in the House and Senate, and whatever we do won't make any difference. But that experience of the first year showed me differently. I think we can make a difference, and and we're working towards it again this year. So it's been fun. It's been time consuming.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about on UnBolted many times is the idea that if we believe that the power or the structure of government goes down to the state level, then we have to steward that even more, right? So you can't say like, hey, I only want national things so I can ignore everything, and there's some kind of carbon copy thing across the whole nation. But if we're gonna have a federalist view where there's government at the state level and at the national level, and they have levels or limits, then we gotta steward these insights. So part of this legislative action team that you're on is trying to steward those things. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely the case, because in some ways the doings of the federal actually distant from us, and that's an idea I actually bought into in some ways, in that I always regarded the U.S. as a collection of states and almost independent.
Uh-oh.
Well, we might have lost him, but let's talk about that for just a second, and maybe he'll come back on here. But that, I think sometimes, like the idea of Roe versus Wade, right? So that was a national decision that then the Supreme Court said, hey, no longer are we going to have this be national. Oh, is he back on? Are you back there?
Peter, you're cutting back, yes. In and out quite a bit.
Sorry, we lost you there.
Yeah.
Briefly. So the idea of keeping an eye on what the states are doing is absolutely vital, because they're often at odds.
So Peter is in his home is, I think, more in the wooded area, the outskirts, and so he may be having a little bit of internet things there. But what he was just talking,
yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you're there. Okay.
I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm
Might
sorry.
try if your internet is unstable, Peter. You might just cut your video. We love seeing you, but we definitely want to hear you, and so maybe that might work
Yeah,
for a
that
little
might
bit
work.
until it gets a little better.
I-
But
We'll try
Brian, you were talking about just the different levels of how important it is to be involved locally, even though like a lot of our news is focused on federal news, and people tend to hyper focus on that. Really, the most all politics are local is a very good quote, and we like to say like you may have your most impact locally.
Right.
What were you saying about that, Brian?
No, it's exactly right. And so this is where when we understand that local stewardship, and that's what I like to call it, right? Where we really make sure that we're getting good laws out for the state of Washington in this case, that we will be able to have that more direct involvement. So I think as we look at a more of a national level, we have to be a little bit more concerned. Remember, the national level is really just for safety and security of its people. The local level is the common goods of the people. And so that separation is really supposed to be there collectively as the United States. We're supposed to make sure all of our citizens are safe and secure, but then locally, the local government, i.e., state and below, is supposed to take care of the common shared resources like hospitals and roads and all those kind of things that we have. And of course, I know there's going to be some haters out there. Well, there's the state guard, and I'm not saying that there's not. I'm just saying just overall big concept wise.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Peter? I know you were cutting out before, so we missed what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, you make a very important point there that the state legislature should be in touch with the people and actually more responsible for them locally.
Darn internet, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I know I popped it on the screen a second ago about the legislative action team. And that's something that Spokane started a couple years ago. Here was the Spokane County Republican Party started a committee that was called their legislative action team. She wanted to call it something a little different. The committee wanted to call it something different besides a committee, because we have all these committees, and they wanted to have action associated with it. So this is a team, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Peter. Hopefully we can hear you. Is what is that team? What do you guys do on this committee, on this team? And what kind of effects is it having? Oh, we lost them all together.
So let me just close that thought out. Because you and I were part of this development of this to a remote start. We were leading, and Stephanie was running with it. But the concept was how do you have eyeballs in Olympia while you live in Spokane, in essence, and really seeing what is taking at place at the state level. Because what it kind of happened to whatever degree is there was a lot of sub organizations or like FPIW Action, like Conservative Ladies of Washington, like they're all across the state that were really watching, but the party level, they weren't necessarily doing that. And so this is where this team comes in and does that. Peter, again, I would just cut your camera is what I would do. If you click on the camera button on the stop cam, it will just leave your mic on. There you go. Let's try that out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yep.
Looks like I'm back. I'm sorry about that. It's
oh no, it's okay.
So yeah, legislative action team. I saw the comment there. Actually, the legislative action team was in response to Stephanie is the driving force for it. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that the people around me. I've talked to some of my neighbors and quite a few people related to the activity in this county at least, and realized that a lot of people are quite ignorant of the way that the legislature works and don't know what's happening and don't know how to look at it or see it in any way. So the legislative action team is a great way to actually try to keep an eye on what's coming through the legislature and actually encourage people to actually get it active in the process. There's quite a few of us, and we actually seem to subdivide into teams. Sometimes my particular interest is the Second Amendment legislation that comes through. But I look at all the bills and testify on the ones, or register a position on the ones that are of concern to me, at least. And it's not always con; it's sometimes pro. We see some good legislation coming through.
Let me unpack that for just a second. So there's 4 basic actions that you can take involved in our legislative process. 1, you can register your position. I'm for this, I'm against this, pro or con. Number 2 is you can do written testimony where you say pro or con and then why. Number 3 is you can do a remote testimony. So anywhere across the state, you can sign in, and if you're called upon, you can testify in the committees. And then 3, you can do 4, you can do in-person testimony. And so those are the 4 basic ways that you can interact as a citizen of Washington State within the legislative process. And so I love that, Peter, that you're testifying, because that's one of the greatest things that we can do. Usually only have 30 seconds to a minute, or sometimes 2 minutes to do that. But tell us more about that. Yeah.
So the path you take to do that is actually directly proportional to the amount of time you're willing to spend or have available to do it. Clearly, video testimony, which I've done a couple of times actually, is the most time consuming. You have to actually register to testify, and then sit around and wait and see if you get called on. And it can be a couple of hours to testify in committee. Written testimony is a lot easier. Of course, you can just register your details and type in there are reasons for opposing or supporting a particular bill. And that's quick. Testifying as to your position on a particular bill is even better. You can use autofill, and it's a very quick process. So, and with the number of bills coming through the legislature at any one time, you can spend an enormous amount of time to do it. So for a lot of them, I'm a little bit selective about it. I testify against the ones that I find particularly appealing or egregious, and I'll give written testimony or register for video testimony. And for those ones which are a little blander, I will actually just register my position. Right. But that's actually relevant to one of the bills that I was going to talk about today, and that's the one thing that that kind of made me realize that we can make a difference in this process.
Right.
And it's measurable. It's not so easy.
Well, I want to talk about. Yeah, and I want to talk about like the legislative action team resources, because I think it's so great because it's local. We know that the issues that your team takes on, are important to the people here locally. There's so many bills to focus on that it's overwhelming for a lot of people, right? But this is a great resource, and you can go to SpokaneGOP.com and go under Take Action and sign up for the legislative action team right there. So SpokaneGOP.com, and weekly they'll email you like their top, 5 or 10 bills that you can take action on, right, Peter?
That's great.
That's a great resource.
That is a great resource. And actually we meet on Zoom twice a week at the moment during the legislative session on Mondays and Thursdays, 7:15 in the evening. So Stephanie hosts the Monday meeting, and I'll host the Thursday meeting for those people who can't make it. And there's a number of ways to actually get what's going on. We can actually be in that meeting and discussing bills that are going through and that are of concern to us. Stephanie sends out a weekly email during the legislative session that highlights a few of the bills that are of interest to us. And there are lots of other resources that you can look at. Family Policy Institute of Washington, for instance, have the Defender app, which can send us alerts. There's an influencer out there, Nancy Churchill from Influencing Olympia, who actually spends a lot of time and does this daily. So she will highlight bills that are actually going through committee or onto a House floor vote or wherever they are in the process on a daily basis.
Right.
So, yeah,
great resources.
Yeah, one of the things to realize is if you're new to all this, there's hundreds upon hundreds of bills. And so a lot of times what people say is pick a lane, pick something you're passionate about, maybe one topic, and then find that committee and then go in and look those things up. Or
Right.
find people like we have here, the Legislative Action Team, or Nancy Churchill, or Conservative Ladies of Washington, whoever, and use them as a first filter, you might say, because literally I think there are going to be 3,000 bills submitted or attempted to go through the process this year. So this session. So sometimes you may want someone to filter that out for you a little bit. But if you don't, if you want to say, I want to go directly myself, that's perfectly fine. You can do that.
We actually, the Legislative Action Team is a good way to do that, because we maintain a spreadsheet which is separated by broad categories. So there's a Second Amendment page, and a parents' rights page, and election integrity page, which you can just pick on and look at those bills that are of most interest to you. And part of the team's remit is to actually, get people educated on how to get involved in this stuff.
Absolutely.
So it is a very useful tool if you're interested in doing this. And I think everybody should be interested in doing this, because there are so many people out there that don't follow this, don't understand it, and then wonder what happened when some bill comes along that, increases their property taxes by 3%, or otherwise impacts their energy bill, for instance. And so it's really important to actually get involved in this process. And the Legislative Action Team is a good way to do it.
Yes, for sure. So let's talk about these bills, because they are pretty egregious bills that are going on. And we're not going to talk about all of them. As Brian said, there's a whole bunch of them, and there's a whole slew of bad ones. There's a few good ones. But let's start out with 1296, House Bill 1296. This has been a very big one. Yeah, that has been super, super important this year. It basically, we had the initiative, the 2081, which was the Parents' Bill of Rights a couple years ago, that over 450,000 citizens in the state of Washington signed, and was passed into law last year, about a year ago. And now HB 1296 is looking to gut a lot of those rights, those parents' rights and notifications that law put into place. So Peter, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts about this bill.
Yeah, so I've had a look at this bill. I have several thoughts about it. Actually, it went into a public hearing in the Senate committee yesterday, and actually heard what the outcome of that was as yet, but I'll follow up with it later. The thing that strikes me mostly about this bill, actually there are a couple of things, but as you said, 450,000+ people in Washington state voted in favor of the initiative to pass the Parents' Bill of Rights, and it was passed into law. What I find difficult about this is why do the Democratic majority seem to think that they can just overturn the will of the people in that way, by introducing a bill which effectively goes against everything that initiative put forth. And what they're effectively doing is they're actually transferring power to the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and mandating things that are technically rights for your children, and when and where they need to actually report it to you. It's in direct contravention of the term set forth in the initiative. So it's a perfect example of where they feel empowered to ignore the will of the people. It seems very clear to me that this was the will of the people, to be able to actually have a say in their own child's education, and and there's so much that's bad in this bill. It protects transgender rights, which flies against the both the Washington state constitution and the federal mandates that have come out since President Trump came to office. And it's putting the school boards locally into a very difficult position.
Hey, Peter, let me. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we're seeing that in Meade at the moment. In fact, that you know, they're trying to get Meade to buy into this charter, and Meade actually school board do not want transgender students in the bathrooms of, you know, female students.
Let me comment on a couple of things with this. I think one of the things I keep hearing on the street when I'm traveling is people will say, see, why do we even do initiatives? They just undo them later. And we need to come to that objection, and we need to talk about that for a moment. So remember, we are to do the right thing regardless of whether someone else does the right thing or not. Number two is we're in a battle. And what I mean by a battle is war is always messy, and it is not always fair. And so why I say that, because we're in a battle for our kids. We want to protect our children, and there's others who have a different perspective on what that means. And so I believe mostly this is a spiritual battle. I believe it's, you know, it's a battle over, you know, the ability for our kids to be safe and secure, and that parents are the primary stakeholder of their kids' lives. So I just want to remind you that the enemy of our hearts, you know, in the spiritual battle that we're in, is not always playing fair. So we still do the right thing regardless is really important. And I think it's a lot of work that we did to get this initiative through. And so we got to go to the very end. It's not the end of the war, though. And that's really important. And we need to let our voices be heard over and over again as we look at these initiatives and these bills.
Yeah. So, Peter, you
Absolutely
said you
agree.
testified. Yeah, you testified yesterday. Did you testify in person, or did you just sign in?
No, I just signed in yesterday. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it is. I agree entirely with you that it is our responsibility fighting. But if we just and say, "Well, we can't do anything about it," it's abrogating our.
Yeah, it's releasing our authority, I think is what he was going to say. And MJ, have you heard that too, where people are getting frustrated that the people are putting these bills in, and then the politicians are undoing it? Have you heard that objection?
I haven't heard that directly, but
Okay.
I would definitely put caution exactly what you're saying to that, because we can't if we give in, then they've won. And we can't allow that. If they think that we are just going to throw our hands up and walk away in defeat, then we're giving them the victory. So
Exactly right.
we are going to keep this up. I wanted to show you this screen.
Yeah.
This was yesterday. The bill was heard again in the Senate, and I'll show you the other screen here to show you exactly where it is in the process. We usually like to do that. 1296. This is how many people signed in for the bill, and how many people signed in against it. So there was almost 6,000 people that signed in, and 80% of them were against it.
5-1.
And yep, 20% were for it. So that's what we're talking about, what you can do to make a difference. So yeah, what are your thoughts about just how this bill is transpiring, Brian?
Well, I think it's just one of those things. We don't want to give into a defeatism mentality. If we are going to win as conservatives, and for those of us who are Christian conservatives, we don't give up. We keep doing the right thing, because those are the principles in which we stand upon. And our children are worth saying, no, enough is enough. You cannot do medical procedures on them without parental consent. The parents are the primary stakeholders, and that you can't, indoctrinate our kids in this direction. And so, yeah, I just 5-1. That's a good job, guys. What I would love to see is we got to keep growing that, where it's 1,000-1, right? We've just got to keep letting our voice be heard. Show us where you are on the Ledge Wallet website there.
Yeah. So if you go to ledge.wa.gov and you can follow any of the bills there. Did Peter come back on, Brian?
He's getting closer. He's almost
Okay.
logged
All
back
right.
in. Yeah.
So ledge.wa.gov, you can type in the bill number if you know it, and then you just type it right in here and then click search and it will pop up. So this will tell you where it is in the process. So as this bill did have a substitute bill that also was making it through, that already kind of made it through the Senate, started in the Senate and made it all the way through the Senate and now is in the House. But this is the bill that seems to have a little bit more legs. And so we're watching this a little closely. The other bill hasn't had a hearing scheduled yet. So where it went through the House, it started in the House. It's got to make it. It had to make it through the House of Origin. Those are the terms they like to use.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made it through in the wee hours of the night last week. We talked about that last Friday. So here you can see it made it all the way through the committee. Then on the floor, it passed the chamber, and now it's in the Senate. And then this week, it was scheduled, as we've been talking, for a hearing in the Senate committee yesterday morning. And there was that public hearing. So you can go and find and watch that. You can go here, I believe, to the videos. Let's see if it pops up.
Yep.
Here it is right here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the video of the Education Committee yesterday, that hearing where people publicly testified. So you can listen to that, and those people that signed in pro or testified pro and testified con, and then there. Let me show you what else. This is where I find out where we are in the process. Right before that, right underneath that graph, March 20th is where it showed where it had the public hearing. Now, the next step would be for them to have an executive session, and that's where they would vote on it in the Senate in that committee. And so we'll be waiting that. But the public hearing has been over for this bill in the Senate.
It looks like Peter's back. Welcome back, Peter.
Let's see if I can pull him up on the screen.
One thing to note while she's showing you that screen is when you put the bill number in, put only the number. Don't put HB or SB at the beginning. Only the number, because it won't come up if you put. I've had people like, it doesn't work. No, just 1296 or whatever number it is. Yeah, just a number up there. Is Peter back?
Yep. Good to have you back, Peter.
He's back.
All right.
Thank you. Sorry, I kicked me out of StreamYard for some reason.
Well, you were doing a little better without the video there, but I don't know if, yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to keep on. Yeah. So any other thoughts about this bill?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it seems to be with 6 we're looking at, right?
1296.
So it's just directly in contravention to the will of the people. But so we have to just keep working on this and letting them know what we think. It's a terrible dismantling of that so many people signed. And I did notice one interesting thing about it. There's a section in that says that the rights of students are actually U.S. Constitution and state constitution, and it actually does in those rights. But what we didn't actually enumerate was Second Amendment rights to by.
Well, you're breaking up again, Peter. We're only catching of every
other word.
5 words, I think. Yeah, unfortunately. Brian, one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody was I was doing some research on this, and I was looking into, who were the organizations that were promoting this bill, and I thought it was really interesting. And if you asked me to show you how I got in there, I probably could, but it might be a little bit more challenging.
That's okay.
But let me show you this. So this is my screen from yesterday, right before the hearing, and you could go in there. So this is where, like Peter was talking about, where you can go in and you can click to testify or to sign in pro or con. And once you click the bill number, it says see who else is signed in to testify or to sign in for this hearing. So you can see on this spreadsheet who signed in for and against this bill. Now, the top part is for who is testifying. So I want to just take a moment to tell you the organizations that are did sign in pro for this bill, this bad bill that we think is terrible. So I'm going to just kind of go past any, individuals, because that's, individually. But we have PRO, the Washington Education Association, which is the union, the teachers union. We have PRO, PFLAG, Skagit. And a couple of us looked into that, and it was a gender kind of expansive promoting advocacy group out of Skagit. Gender Justice League signed in pro. The QLAW Association signed in pro. The Washington School Counselors Association signed in pro, as did Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates. Let's see, the Washington Business, and I'm thinking maybe, I'm not sure if that's the roundtable. I need to double check on if that person is associated with it's either the Washington Business Administration or or I think it's the Washington Business Roundtable, and the Seattle Council PTSA co-president. That's just the first sheet. And so you can go on from there. I think it's pretty interesting. Thoughts?
Yeah, Planned Parenthood was in there as well. And I would just say, as you look at these lists, kudos to everyone that registered their position. I think as the whole harbor goes up, that's great. I also hope that we have our conservatives speaking up on this bill, but also our reasonable Democrats who just want to say, you know what, our children are the rights of primary property of the parents, and we need Democrats saying it as well. I know there's a lot of good Democrat parents out there. You need to start saying something. You need to be able to step out of wanting to be liked or wanting to be whatever and say, no, enough is enough. We've all got to begin to do that. So, hey, good find on that too. That just really helps who's doing what on those bills.
Yeah, because
I have a comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Curious your thoughts.
So this is, I was that we see how well we're doing, and actually see if we are making a difference. One of the bills that a bill to make that firearms owners have $5,000 worth of coverage for each of the firearms in their possession. And when I looked at the list of how many people signed in, more than 18,000 people signed in to register a con position against that bill, and just a little over 300 signed pro. So that for me is an overwhelming statement.
Yeah.
Was that 1163 you're talking about?
That was there was one earlier in the year, and I'm sorry I don't remember the number.
Yeah.
But, it was about requiring insurance coverage. And then, one of the bills that I wanted to briefly mention today was engrossed substitute House Bill 1531, which enables public health officials to control the management of communicable disease in the community. More than 10,000 people have signed in to register a position on that bill, and they're almost overwhelmingly con. Pushing through. It had a public hearing in the Senate committee this morning at 8 o'clock. So that's one where that voice of the people again is being ignored here. I guess because I don't know what the result of that committee meeting was, but I suspect that this is one of the bills that they'll want to push through.
Yeah, so they usually tend to do a public hearing one day, and listen to everybody that wants to testify and comment or, sign in their position. And then they usually schedule an executive session on that bill another day. So we'll keep eyes on that. I do have that pulled up. I don't know if me sharing this makes you break up more, so I'm a little tentative here.
Let me read our bill summary of this. I love
Yes.
this. It says HB 1531 mandates the public health responses to community diseases must be guided by science-based evidence. And it says prioritizing proven measures like immunization. Now, why Peter's laughing, I think, is because we just all went through COVID. Let's not forget. And the scientist-based evidence is that, masking and vaccines will stop the flow of the COVID response. And it has been now scientifically proven under new science, I guess, that those things haven't taken place, that it wasn't true science. And then it says the bill explicitly prohibits any conflicting laws or policies that declares existing ones null and void. So it's doubling down on what we just went through in COVID. And it's saying, listen, we're going to come up with these things that we actually know harm people. And we're going to say it's okay. Now, mind you, I'm all good for good science, but it's got to be real science, and it's got to be something that is tested and tried and true, not just people making things up. And it says, finally, our review says, unless you want the state to direct your medical care and dictate what vaccines you're taking, in addition with immunizations of your children, please oppose this scary legislation. And I know, MJ, and I don't think you mind me saying this, you have a vaccine in your child. And so it's one of those things where, man, people should have the freedom. If they want to get it. And if they don't, then they shouldn't have to be mandated to do those things.
Yeah. What's your feelings on this bill, Peter?
I think disgrace. I mean, as Brian says, we went through COVID recently. I doubt if the current governor, recognized a scientific paper if it fell on him, and certainly would never have read one. And so, he's making mandates that rely on the advice of people who have a vested interest potentially. I think it's disgraceful, and haven't necessarily learned the lessons that that should have taught us. We were lied to, and I think
one of the things is if they would just come back and say we were wrong, it would make it a little bit more palatable. I haven't heard one elected official yet say they spread misinformation or disinformation, or they told a lie, or they didn't do their research, or they were wrong. I haven't heard that from any place yet. And so trust isn't rebuilt until you can acknowledge that you did something wrong.
Especially with such draconian measures, it was so massive and tyrannical. And
it's the politics of fear.
What's that?
It's the politics of fear. It's a means for the people in power to secure more power and control by, playing on the fears of the people, whether the science behind it is founded or not. In reality, it's just pure and simple the politics of fear, and the same where you see so many climate-related or climate change-related bills. Politics of fear again.
Yep, you nailed it, Peter. And the other thing that is just, throws in the face of what actual science is that you can't question it. I mean, science is always like, what's your hypothesis? Yeah. Right. I mean, we learned that back in grade school, right?
Yeah.
I remember that. And so that you can't question the science means it's not science, right? Thoughts on that?
No, I you're fully right. Like the whole idea of us testing things, like think of it when you were a little kid. Like one of the things I always liked testing was gravity, right? I mean, we could test it, right? And what happens is it was true science. So what went up came back down. I had a grenade, like one of those dud grenades that you get at the armory store, dropped on my head because we learned gravity does fall when it comes to a tree, even if it hits on your head. And so that explains a lot about me. But my point is that science can be questioned, it can be tested, and good science will allow you to do it because it embraces and invites robust dialogue for us.
Yeah, it absolutely should be questioned, and what shouldn't really happen is that any any narrative that doesn't agree with with your agenda should be suppressed. That definitely is not appropriate.
Yeah, that's
But
what
yeah,
was
we should.
so shocking when we went through COVID is all of those things happened, didn't they? You couldn't question it. The censorship of any kind of narrative that might be different, and to think
Yep.
that we know everything. I mean, I hope we're smart enough to know that none of us know everything, and our government certainly is not perfect, right? And so we've got to always be learning to get better. So yeah, this is a shocking, like tone deaf bill at the least to try to ram this through and make these kind of policies, especially after what we went through COVID.
Yeah.
Well, and you think about this is actually a really good strategic evil plan. So think about this. So we saw how this is all played out and it didn't do what we thought it should do. So let's just change the rules. So there's less ability to question, right? Let's change it because we know that these quote emergency powers that we can just institute, people aren't going to buy that anymore. And so I look at this and I'm thinking, good on them for trying, in the sense of the evil part, right? But we got to stand up and say enough is enough. Like, we need, this is where we need our policies and our processes to begin to take place, where we say we've got to think as wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove, right? Where we think through this, because this is a regular playbook of the progressive agenda, is to say, okay, it didn't work, so let's just shut it off. So next time we don't even have to argue about the free speech part. We don't have to argue about these things. And so, obviously I'm not praising the bill. I'm simply saying it's strategic to do this so that they can have their next COVID response.
I have a 4-point plan for being an evil dictator of this country. One of them is to make the people afraid, take control of the media, take control of the education system, and disarm the populace. That's my 4-point plan for being an evil dictator.
Yeah,
you can see the roots of that in today's meeting.
Boy, and with the legislation that they're trying to pass, I think they're trying to do all of the above, Peter. So I wanted to just pull up the summary, the bill summary, and you can find that on that same page, where we were under ledge.wa.gov under tell me the House. Is it 1530? Which
1531.
1531. And so, this is what this bill is doing, as we've been talking about. And so it's definitely one that we need to keep involved with. And even if it passes through committee, it doesn't mean it's done. It still will have a hearing on the Senate floor. It's in the Senate right now, correct? And so you can still advocate with your legislators, your senators, and all the senators that would be voting with this. And I think, like you said, there was around 20,000 people that had signed in, and so that's pretty powerful.
There were 207 pages of testimony. That's more than 10,000 people, for sure.
Wow.
So around 10,000
and this is
people.
really a nonpartisan issue or a bipartisan issue. I mean, think about this. Maha is, Robert Kennedy. Last time I checked, he was a Democrat, right? I mean, I don't know if he still is or not, but he comes from that party. And so I keep hounding on this in the state of Washington, Peter, and I know people don't like it, but the fact is we need everyone who has just that common sense for the common good of the people to stand up. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, and say, keep your hands off of our bodies, right? And we can go to the life issue. We can talk about that, what that means there. I believe it's 2 bodies, just so we're clear. But the fact is that this bill is going to harm businesses, harm individuals, harm people. And I don't think you should say, well, the Republicans say it's this way, the Democrats say it that way. We have both sides, both parties saying this is a bad bill at different levels in the nation.
Absolutely, it's terrible, and the economic consequences of COVID are still resounding, and that didn't nearly allow as much freedom as this bill would give these people.
Yeah.
Right. And not just the economic impacts, but the medical impacts, the people that have
Yeah.
died from COVID. I don't know what the vaccination.
Mm.
That number is, I believe it's actually higher than the people that actually died from COVID now. And I wish I had those stats to pull up for you right now, but that's how wrong we got it.
Yeah.
And people are having heart attacks and kids having heart attacks and heart issues. So there
Mm.
was a lot of bad stuff that happened with that, and it was a forced vaccination, and we got it really, really wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of concerns with this. Peter, what were some of the other bills that were top of your list?
Well, there are two that I looked at. One of them was actually House Bill 1399 and its companion bill, House Bill 5364, which effectively said the same thing, that law enforcement officers were needed to be held to a standard, and that sheriffs and law enforcement officers actually didn't make any difference whether they're appointed or elected, but they were to be held to a certain standard and were required to certificate, and that if they didn't hold to that standard and pass their certification, they could be removed from office and a replacement appointed. And the other thing it said was something that's relevant to me personally, is that any volunteer assistance that the sheriff's office could use, such as militia or volunteer, couldn't be used in a law enforcement capacity. So they couldn't carry weapons or be involved in assisting the sheriff in an emergency without passing through the same certification procedure. It's a thinly veiled attempt to actually.
Uh-oh. Did we lose
So
you?
one of the back things on this is we need to remember that for most counties in the state of Washington, their sheriff is elected. And that elected sheriff, if you know what a constitutional sheriff is, we understand in the state of Washington, our Constitution says that the sheriff is the last safeguard in case the Constitution is violated. Now, in practice, oh, are you back?
I'm back here.
Okay. In practice, we know that mostly we've moved to a attorney-based sheriff system. In other words, the sheriffs look to the attorney first to see whether they can legally do something or not. Unfortunately, they somewhat relinquished their authority that the Constitution. I believe they've relinquished their authority that the Constitution has entrusted to them in both our state and our federal levels. So. By certifying people, what you could do is undo the vote of the people to pick their own sheriff or their own law enforcement to represent them. Because in each county, typically the sheriff is the highest. I don't know of any counties that aren't, so I'm using loose language just because I'm not sure. I haven't studied every county, but I believe that the sheriff is the highest. The elected sheriff is the highest law enforcement in that county.
That's right, and they're elected by the people. So I would prefer that the will of the people be maintained and not turn over the appointment of sheriffs to an unelected bureaucrat or a group of unelected bureaucrats. They're the only law enforcement agency that has the ability to discriminate whether a law is constitutional and choose to enforce or not enforce it because of that. Their mandate is to enforce constitutional laws. And so, this is just another way to subvert the will of the people for me. And of course, being involved in the local militia as well, it's disturbing that effectively they want to eliminate people who are capable and ready and well trained and ready to help in an emergency.
Yeah, Peter, talk to us in the audience a little bit more about that. I think a lot of people don't understand what that is, and because they don't have the understanding, that can be a scary term to them. Sounds maybe radical. I don't think it is at all. And but I think if you would share what your experience has been and what the purpose is there, I think that would be super helpful to the audience.
Yeah, so I'm a member of the a state militia organization, basically, and it's a group of citizens who are enabled.
Shoot, we're losing you, Peter. Brian, do you have much knowledge about the militia?
So I do know that our militia is part of our constitution, and I gotta say this is probably one area that I'm least familiar with. So I was actually looking forward to Peter's answer. I'm least familiar with that, but I do know this, that sometimes people equate like extreme groups like white supremacists or KKK or those kind of things with the militia, and I've met a number of these people. I'm not personally one of the militia, but I've met them. That's not what that I've seen, at least. That's not what the people are about. Our Constitution talks about a militia group, and this is the idea where the sheriff can, in times of extreme chaos, you might say, and or environmental times, like if there's fires or something, they can help support law enforcement by having these trained individuals be a part of that. But I don't know a lot of, this is one area I just don't know a lot about. So how about you, MJ? Do you know?
I just where I've been at events with some of the people, and I know some of the people now being involved with the Republican Party, which is really cool. Like Peter, a number of other people that have been involved that serve on the militia, and they've come to events to help keep us safe. And like Peter was saying, Peter, hopefully you're back now. That the militia actually helps serve the sheriff at times and can assist in serving. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so exactly that. We're a group of citizens who can assist the sheriff in the event of an emergency, or help to alleviate some of the manpower issues that the sheriff might face in certain circumstances. We can do we've cannoned security for events that occur. You've seen some of them recently. Provide security for candidates for public office. For instance, we actually did security for a number of events for Semi Bird when he was running in the gubernatorial race. We actually we train every week. In fact, we get more training in some circumstances than the sheriff's offices do, but we train to cope with these situations, and vast majority of the time, we don't expect any trouble, but we like to assist, and of course, the real reason I think that the left-leaning people don't like that sort of organization is because they stand opposed to tyranny largely, and they're afraid. Whereas the majority of people who are in this organization, not advocates for civil war or civil unrest. Anybody who is probably has never been through anything like that, and so they.
So MJ, did we lose you, Peter?
Yeah, it sounds like we're losing Peter again.
So I looked up the RCWs on Washington State militia while we were sitting here, and I like to read this because it's actually in our state law. So this is, like I said, this is not some crazy thing. It just says the militia of the state of Washington shall consist of an able body of citizens of the United States and all other bodies, persons who have declared their intention to become citizens of the United States, residing within. They must be 18 years of age and shall include the persons who are members of the National Guard and the State Guard. And said militia shall be divided into two classes, the organized militia and unorganized militia. So if you want to look up and study this more, of course, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving you legal advice, but it's 38.04.030 and or 38.04.040. And you can look those up.
Correct.
Yeah, RCWs. Yep. And you can look up what those are about. And so they can be called upon. And what was interesting, I don't know, at the beginning of this RCW, it says something about what was that? When an emergency is called martial law, there it is. Seems to be in that section of the RCWs. So I'm not sure how that all plays. And again, I'm not an expert on this whatsoever, but it must tie into that somehow. Peter, are you back?
I am back, yes.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And the other thing that's really important about the militia, I just looked this up, is in the Constitution, it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, right? It's all within that same clause. And so that's how important it is that we protect the militia. And, think of it as a second layer of security. So you've got as many sheriffs and police as your county and your cities can, pay for, right? But here we have volunteers that commit their time once a week, as Peter was sharing with us, to go and train. So we have a trained volunteer organization that can come in and add extra layer of security when needed to assist the local police and county sheriffs. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. We don't want to diminish that. Thoughts, Peter?
Absolutely. If you go back to the time when the Constitution was drafted, actually everybody was a member of the militia. Every able-bodied man and woman was able-bodied citizen was a member of the militia. And as far as I'm concerned, that's still the case today. And it's, as you say, not just about throwing off the yoke of tyranny, although it was in 1776. I've forgiven you guys for that, by the way. But
well, thank you, Peter.
But being from the UK, huh?
Yeah. Well, I celebrate Independence Day for the same reasons you do. Getting away from all those annoying English relatives.
Right. Well, Peter, let's talk about lastly 1163, because that bill is definitely infringing the constitutional rights, the God-given rights to hold and bear arms. And that one is alive and well, unfortunately. And so, talk to us as somebody that came from the UK about the importance of having, maintaining and not having our rights of bearing arms infringed upon. If you can. Are you there? We're just having all sorts of technical difficulties.
Well, that's okay. So let me back this up. I mean, I want to answer that question that you just talked about. So I think sometimes when people think of this, they think of concealed carry, they think of hunting, they think of those kind of things. But really, if you look at what's happening in Syria and Lebanon, around the world, where you have this invasion of tension from one party, one group, and they're just shooting people outright, the Alawites outright, or the Christians outright in the streets, right? So this is really the idea of why we have firearms. Yeah, sure, it is to go hunting, fishing. I don't know why I'm saying fishing, because you don't usually shoot. But anyways, but go hunting. It is for self-defense, but it's really the idea of this of the militia, or if there was martial law, to protect yourself in those moments. And so the right to bear arms, I think it's always funny when people large capacity magazines. So if we have an intruder, and I just always want to say, if you need a large capacity magazine for an intruder, you need to go shoot more and become a better shot. The reason why you need a large capacity magazine is because if you have an army who has a large capacity magazine coming at you, you have to have something comparable to defend yourself. And so, I just think that we need to remember the reason that we have the right to bear arms is not primarily for the self-defense in the sense of an invader in our home. Do we have that? Yes, of course we should. But it's really in these, if you look at, like I said, Syria, Lebanon, you look at these other areas where you're seeing entire people groups come against each other. It's in that type of environment that you need to be able to protect yourself. An invading army, you might say, coming in, it's in those things. And you say, well, it's the United States. This would never happen. I said, oh, really? So did you think the Syrians or the Lebanons or any of those sat back and thought, oh, this will happen? Because that's just one of the things that they've done is to disarm certain people groups in those countries.
Yeah.
Peter,
are you back with us?
I am back with you, yes. So there's a couple of things to unpack there. There are probably, estimates vary, but there are probably 400 million guns in this country right now, and about 12 billion rounds of ammunition. So the idea that you can actually, just turn back the clock and make all those firearms disappear is completely ludicrous. And there's absolutely really no reason to actually try. We have this right, and whatever you believe it's for, whether it's for self-defense or standing against tyranny, it's there, and trying to take it away in the way that they do is actually nonsensical. And there's a couple of things to unpack there. That first of all, if you're going to take firearms away from people, you're implying that you have a right to protect them in some way, and that you're responsible now for their security. Now, if I have a home intruder in my home, I live 30 minutes outside town. I'm not going to see a police officer for about 30 minutes. And by then it could well be too late, So I need to keep that right of self-defense because you can't guarantee my security. And the other thing is that the way they go about it is to impose a whole series of obstacles for you to actually carry out that right of self-defense. And the thing that goes ignored every time is that people who have criminal intent don't obey whatever laws you put into place. It's very clear. You can ban guns as much as you like. In Chicago, Illinois, there's some very draconian gun laws and the worst murder rate per capita in the nation. And it's proven by statistics again and again and again that criminals don't obey gun laws, and bills that you pass to interfere with rightful gun owners, lawful and rightful gun owners' rights have no effect on public safety. In fact, in some cases, it's worse. It makes it worse. Mm-hmm. And yet, all these bills that come out, they always have public safety in the headlines. So what they're doing is just trying to chip away to make people align with an ideology that's fundamentally flawed. And if you really want to stop shootings in schools and incidents where people, go crazy, then start addressing some of the mental health issues that are actually there, and start enforcing the laws that are already on the books. And so, you don't have the means to guarantee my security. So why take away my right to defend myself? And again, I often think, why do they do this? Why, when there's so much irrefutable evidence against what they want to do? And I think it's the part of the Second Amendment that says, we have a right and responsibility, if we don't like our government, to replace it with something else that more suits our needs, actually. It's fear again.
It's part
It's a
of your
flawed
four-point.
ideology.
It's
Yeah.
part of your 4-point plan, right?
Well, it is. It's part of my 4-point plan. Yeah, disarm the citizenry, and then I can be an evil dictator, and nobody can object. And so this particular bill is one of the more egregious ones. It actually requires you to seek government permission to purchase or transfer a firearm. It includes a training course with a live fire training component. It creates an illegal registry of owners and all their personal information. Yeah, it's just, again, a part of this flawed ideology, and they're pursuing it in the belief that, or I think they've been emboldened by the fact that there was an appellate court decision in Oregon that said that this was actually permissible and not a contravention of the Constitution. Despite the fact that there are actually other legal challenges pending right now for similar schemes across the country. But I think they're emboldened by what Oregon think, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this bill pushed through, and actually a whole slew of legal challenges will inevitably arise, and the taxpayer will have to foot the bill for it. It's a perfect example of legislation pushed through based on a flawed ideology that will then to make law-abiding gun owners and taxpayers suffer.
Yeah, this is a horrendous bill, and I've shared some videos of our Spokane County Sheriff John Knowles giving an interview with one of the media stations about this, about how bad it is, and where you have to be like Peter was saying, you have to get a permit to even purchase a gun, even if you own guns prior, and now you're going to be fingerprinted, and your fingerprints get sent to the FBI. They also have access to your medical and mental health records. It's just a whole slew of bad stuff. So it just adds more bureaucracy. I could say that today, and hindrances to getting and obtaining a weapon for the average citizen, which might be just trying to protect themselves. And one of the things that our sheriff said is actually discriminates more against poor people because of these different levels, the costs and access that these things, basically are going to require. This bill is also, it is moving, as I showed up here. If you can see on your screen, I made it through the House, all the way through the House and the chamber on the floor, and it is in the Senate. It does have a hearing for March 25th, as we can see right here. For the public hearing, it's at 8 o'clock that morning, and so you can click on there to sign in. We would recommend signing in con against that. And what is interesting, different from the other bills we've looked at, is this already has an executive session scheduled for the 27th, which is when they would vote on that. So that, to me, signals that they expect to pass this thing and move it through. So any other thoughts about that, Brian?
No, I just think I would come to the person who's an objection about the people with God, guns, and government, or whatever, without like the accusation. And I would just say, show me one location that that you can find across the globe that got safer by disarming the citizens. Show me one case study. Because what I find, even where they've disarmed, then they move to acid, or they move to knives, or they move to broken glass, or they move to the reality of, if someone wants to cause physical harm to someone else, they're going to find a way to do it, whether it's a rock across the head or something else. So I'm just asking, I'm literally asking, show me one place where a culture or society got safer because they removed firearms. I don't know.
Look what happened in the UK. They banned guns there in response to a terrible incident back in the 90s. And knife crime in the UK is absolutely off the charts right now. And there are still guns there. So your case in point.
Yeah, exactly right.
I've never actually seen a place that has got safer by disarming their citizens. And the other thing is, I've never actually seen a gun that would kill somebody without somebody holding it. If I put it on the table in front of me and say, go kill someone, I've never seen a gun that would do that, So guns aren't dangerous, really. People are sometimes.
Exactly. It's a heart issue. And that's really what we have to understand is, the first murder we have in the Bible is between Cain and Abel. They didn't have a gun. There wasn't available then, but they were able to do it because it's a heart issue, not a tool issue. So that means that there's a more sinister reason for why people would want to disarm a population.
Yeah. And it's not the people, the average, American law-abiding citizen that is committing these crimes. So you're penalizing law-abiding citizens by making it harder for them to help protect themselves and their communities. And we know that the bad guys, if you will, the people that are going to commit crimes are going to find ways to access these guns no matter what. They already do. So it kind of is, the definition of insanity to me. Right here in Spokane during some of the riots that we saw, in the 2020, that summer, we saw downtown kind of erupt in chaos, as did many cities. But over in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is 30 minutes away, 45 minutes away, maybe, depending on what part of Spokane you live in, they had people that came out and protected their communities, came out and stood in front of those storefronts, and nothing got disrupted or destroyed like it did just here in Spokane, as well as many other cities across the nation. And so just like that, a person's ability to protect their community, I don't believe a shot was fired over in Coeur d'Alene, but it was a deterrent to bad behavior and looting and, vandalizing and tons of, property damage that didn't happen in Coeur d'Alene, but happened here in Spokane. So that to me is just an example of why it's important to secure and protect our rights, these Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, an armed society is a polite society.
I think it's important to note, like, I'm a gun owner. I think everyone on this thing is a gun owner. I don't know, but we're not out to want to shoot someone. Right. I mean, that's not, I mean, that would break my heart more than anything to have to do that. We are out to defend, for me, my kids, my family that lives with me. If God forbid someone came in and tried to harm them or to do something to just deplorable to them. So I just want to make sure that we, I don't think any logical gun owner is out like, hey, I just want to go kill someone. No. Those are probably people who should not have a gun, quite frankly, because we're there to protect the vulnerable among us. And that is an attribute of God. He's always protecting the vulnerable. And some may say, well, what happened to the bad thing, here on the side of heaven? Remember, Judgment Day is coming. And in that Judgment Day, God is not going to look lightly on when someone uses power over the vulnerable and hurts them. He says, if you hurt one of these little kids or you hurt someone like that, it's better for a millstone to be tied around your neck and you throw it in the depths of the sea than for you to hurt one of them. So God loves the vulnerable. So, I just want to make that clear. I don't want everyone to think that we take this lightly.
Right. And Peter, I'll go to you here in a second because I want to get your thoughts on this too. But yeah, for me as well, I mean, it is about protecting my family and my community, if need be. And also, like we were talking about before, we know what happens all you got to do is go educate yourself with the historical truths of disarmed populations. It's one of my favorite memes to use. And it has never gone well. I think of Australia. Actually, disarmed in recent years, correct? And there were some shootings that happened. but they
Jesus.
disarmed, and they had some of the worst atrocities during COVID. I mean, they were putting people in these camps, in these secluded places, and charging crazy fines for people that didn't get the COVID shot, bringing back in COVID things.
Yeah.
But they were an unarmed society now.
Yeah.
Peter,
Well, yeah. Technically, yeah, they did collect about 40% of the guns that actually existed out there in Australia. You have to see that Australia is a vast country.
Right.
It's almost the size of the continental US, and with a far lower population that's concentrated around the edges. So, they're a perfect example of disarming the citizens in those centers of population, and everybody else everywhere else has guns. But they were and are a tyrannical government in the making. They treated people terribly, and as far as I'm aware, are still treating people terribly in some respects during COVID. So, yeah, another nation where it didn't go well.
No,
right.
no.
Right. So protecting from tyrannical governments, and that is a very near and present danger thing that is happening right now. We are teetering on that in the US. And if you don't think so, then let's go have coffee and let's talk a little bit more. But I think all of us here, COVID really woke me up to what was going on in our government. And I was appalled. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I remember talking to my dad, who is a farmer who still lives out in rural Eastern Oregon, and saying, Dad, can you believe this? Can you believe that they're requiring us to wear masks? They're shutting down, our businesses, and, all of these tyrannical measures that were done. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And it didn't make common sense. You could go into Costco and you could go into Home Depot, but the mom and pop shops were shut down. And let's see, what were the other I mean, we could go probably another hour talking about the silly measures that happened. If you were seated and eating, you couldn't get COVID because it's never free. You could pull your mask down, but once you stood up, then that was where COVID could hit you. So you had to have your mask on, right?
Crazy rules. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nobody in their right mind advocates for a civil war or a revolution. Nobody who's ever seen the effects of one, anyway, and no moral person, I think, would ever advocate for that, because it's a war. It's terrible, and people are gonna die, and things may change.
We're losing you again a little bit, Peter. Brian, what kind of thoughts do you have kind of to wrap us up here?
Well, I think of things like October 7th, right, with Israel, and you look at the true outcome of those who were armed on that day and home, and the outcome of those who were disarmed. What a lot of people don't know about that story of October 7th is a lot of the people that were either kidnapped, killed, or raped were people who lived close to that border because they had a compassion for the people in the Gaza Strip, and so they were employing them, they were doing these kind of things to help them and feed them, take care of them, and I would just say to just do a little research on that, because what you'll find is that those who were armed, for the most part, not always, either end up, one, dead, or two, they weren't kidnapped. And so, and three, they got away. Right. So, so I'm just saying, let's just not use talking points. Let's really do some research and know about these situations. So, Israel is an armed society and culture. If you've ever been there, you'll see there's a lot of firearms that people are carrying publicly. And so, they do have that more, what would you call it? Militia. I don't want to say militia because it's not called that there, but you know what I'm saying? They have that we the people kind of environment. And so anyways, I just think that's probably a modern example, recent example of things that can happen, and protecting your family is incredibly important. And so, Peter, it's always great. I thank you for coming on and all the bills. I'm sorry we had some technical difficulty today, but thank you for bringing up these 4 bills. This was a great set to look at and talk about.
Yeah, I'm sorry about technical difficulties as well. It's largely my internet, I think, but yeah, it's always good to talk to you guys and bounce ideas around.
Yeah, for sure. And we appreciate what you're doing, Peter. You know, Peter being part of the Spokane County Republican Party doesn't get paid the big bucks. He's a volunteer, does it, out of his own generosity. And so we really do appreciate people like you stepping up, Peter, and giving of your time to help, help get us back on the right track, help our communities, help us locally here in Spokane and Spokane County, as well as at the state level for all Washingtonians and, federally as well in our nation. So we need more people like Peter that will step up and get involved. So if you're out there and you're going, man, yeah, I want to figure out how to get more involved with this, you can go to SpokaneGOP.com. You can go under Take Action if you're in the Spokane area. And there's a number of things you can do on that. Sign up to volunteer if you're interested in being involved, or sign up for the legislative action team like Peter's on and work with Peter, or just get the alerts so that you're getting the emails every week. And it gives you a nice, easy button just to click and takes you right to where you need to do. Need to go to get involved. You can also, and so if you're in other counties across the state, go to your local county Republican Party and sign up. You can also go to the Washington Defender app, right, Brian?
Yeah, you can go to the Apple App Store, Google Play Store, download the Washington Defender app. Of course, we'll have we follow 18 issues, and we put those bills up for you. Also in there is Influencing Olympia. Stephanie Brendan's in there posting as well. It's kind of a one-stop shop for multiple contributors on these initiatives. We know that we're not always going to have the same view on the same bills. That's okay. It's called America. You got to have freedom of speech. You got to have different choices, but at least we'll give you some starting points to do that. So the Washington Defender app or fpiwaction.org.
Yes. So awesome.
Really cool.
So go ahead, Peter. Final thoughts?
It's a worthy cause. Get involved, figure out what's going on, and vote your conscience.
Exactly.
I'll take a pay cut and still keep doing it.
There you go. Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for being with us today, Brian, Peter.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for all you guys are doing, and everybody out there. We really appreciate your time and sharing with us today. So we just say blessings to everybody. Have a happy rest of your Friday. Get involved, stay involved. There's a lot happening still in the legislature for the next couple of months, and we need you. We need every single person to get engaged and get involved. We want to increase those numbers. We want to increase those people signing in against those bad bills. We need your help. So definitely do something today to get involved. Again, have a great day. We appreciate you, and blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.